Losing body fat or even maintaining your current levels of body fat can be a serious challenge for women going through the menopause transition. And I wanted to make this video because even though it's kind of funny because my YouTube stats would show you that about 80% of my audience is male, when it comes to coaching, about 80% of my clients are female, and a big portion of them are women in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s and beyond. So because of this, I've had to become much more knowledgeable in the subject. I've dug in, done a lot of research on it, and I've even had some women who I've been with for 7, 8, even 9 years, and I've seen what happens before and during this transition, and I see how challenging it is. So what I want to do today is talk about some of the science behind menopause, what happens during it, what happens with regards to weight gain, or more specifically fat gain, hormone changes, discuss some of the challenges, and what you can do to help with not only your results, but navigating a difficult time, because I know it has to be so challenging to feel like you're not even in your own body and have no clue what's going on. First though, you notice the hoodie today? Yeah, it's been only in like the 60s for a high here in Florida, so gotta put the hoodie on. Comment below if you feel bad for me. Now, one of the difficult things about the menopause transition is there's really no definitive answer as to when you're in it, and the only time you actually know is when you're actually postmenopausal, which is defined by 12 consecutive months after your last menstrual cycle. And how long you go through this transition varies significantly based on each individual. It might only take a couple years, it could take up to 10 years. Now, on average, it seems that the actual transition period is around 3 years, but either way, it's something you're probably gonna have to deal with for a pretty good portion of time, and while it sucks and I hate it for you, also it's important to just kind of accept that this is the new reality. It can be really frustrating, I get it, and it's totally fine to be upset, but you also have to focus on what you can control moving forward. Some of the strategies I'm going to cover later in this video is aimed to do just that. But the first thing I want to look at is the science behind how much of an impact menopause has on weight gain, or more specifically, fat gain. And there's 2 studies I want to look at initially. The first one is about just a normal pace of weight gain even before the menopause transition. So this first study looked at individuals, both men and female, from 1985 all the way to 2010, so a 25-year period, and it ended while most people were in their 40s and 50s. Both men and females saw significant amounts of weight gain. Men averaged 36 pounds of weight gain during that time, females 39 pounds. And you may hear that and go, oh, it's actually relatively even between men and women, but you have to factor in relative weight gain because females are typically smaller individuals, so those percentage increases would be much higher. But the big question that comes from weight gain for females when they go through the menopause transition is the weight gain you see during that time just a continuation of gaining weight more over time, or is there something about menopause that causes you to gain more weight, or more specifically body fat during that phase? And this is something many women struggle with. So there's a really cool study I want to reference, and this was actually presented to me by Dr. Bill Campbell. He was my professor at USF, and what they looked at was the changes in not just body weight but body composition through the menopause transition. Now, to note, this was not in like active fit lifestyle people, this was just in normal general population, but there was over 1,200 subjects. They followed them for 13 to 15 years. There was also no intervention here. It was just live your life and let's see what happens. And they did yearly body comp testing to look at things like fat mass and fat-free mass, which, for the record, the average age for the final menstrual period was 52 years old. Now I want to present to you this chart that was presented to me by Dr. Bill Campbell, and it really helps show what happens during this phase. Because if you look at what happened before the menopause transition, subjects were increasing weight at a certain rate. And once they hit the menopause transition, you can see the pace of weight gain, it continues at the exact same pace as it did before the menopause transition. So you might look at that and think, wow, they actually didn't gain any more weight. Well, yes, if you only look at weight, there was no difference in that pace. However, there was absolutely changes in body composition. What you can see is weight goes up at the same pace, but lean body mass comes down and fat gain goes up at a faster rate. So if you've noticed that you're starting to store fat differently and things don't look quite the same, even if you're around the same weight, there's probably something to that. And they speculated the decreases in lean body mass was most likely due to declines in estrogen. And this is a problem. I talk all the time about the importance of muscle. Loss of lean body mass gives you increased risk of things like cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, and also reductions in your metabolism. Now, the good news is once you get to the post-menopause period, things do seem to come back to normal and stay pretty steady, so at least this pace doesn't continue. Now, with all that being said, it's easy to take this and say, see, menopause just makes things impossible. You're just going to gain fat like crazy. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, first of all, not necessarily. There's some things we can do. Again, I'm going to touch on that. The other thing we have to factor in is, like I said before, these people aren't active people living a healthy lifestyle, strength training, paying attention to protein, things like that. And we also have to factor in, are these changes because of just the hormonal changes that happen during the transition, or is it changes in your lifestyle that happen because of how you feel during those changes? My guess, probably a combination of the two. We can never say for sure, but you do need to factor that in, because if you're not sleeping well because you're having hot flashes and you have no energy, you have no drive mentally or physically, it's really easy to be much less active than you were before this transition period. So even if you were training a lot before, but now you completely stop, that would lead to things like loss of lean body mass that could be negated if you're able to keep that up. But that can be the challenging thing. Again, I'm going to get to this. Stick with me. But I think this is arguably the biggest challenge for you when you're going through this. And I've talked to several people who have gone through this transition, and everyone says the same thing. It's the energy levels that just take a massive hit. And I hear a lot. I actually didn't change anything. I kept eating the same way. I kept doing my normal routine, even sometimes even keeping up with my normal exercise. I just gained so much fat. And what I asked them is, did your energy levels impact how much you think you moved around on a day-by-day basis? For instance, did you find that you were walking around less, doing a lot more resting at home when you normally be up on your feet and stuff? And every one of them says, yes, absolutely. And you hear me talk all the time about how big of a deal walking is, keeping yourself moving, not just in the gym, but also outside of the gym. And let's just say, for instance, before this transition, you were averaging 10,000 steps a day, and now you go through this and you just wiped out. And now you're averaging 1,000 or 2,000 steps a day. That's gonna make a pretty big difference. But of course, it's hard to stay active. It's hard to train hard and do all the things that you normally did when you feel like crap and have no energy. So what can you do? Well, the first thing is, despite it being really challenging, it's so important to keep up with strength training. Now, this doesn't mean you have to do everything that you did before. You can absolutely back off, and probably should back off. Understand, keeping muscle is way easier than building muscle. So if you were training 4 or 5 days per week all the time for years prior, and now you back off to 2 or 3 times per week, that's going to be enough to keep what you have and get a lot of these benefits, while also making it more realistic and not beat your body down so much when you have no energy. Problem with being able to keep up with your training is you're having a lot of hot flashes, which is causing you to not sleep very well, and without the sleep you have no energy and don't want to train. But there was actually research that looked at women who trained 3 days per week versus no training, and the group that did 3 days per week of training saw 43% less hot flashes. So strength training could actually help minimize your hot flashes, which would help you hopefully sleep better, and then in turn have more energy to be able to keep up with your strength training. And there's research that showed women who regularly exercise didn't see the same slowdowns in resting metabolic rate as females who didn't regularly exercise. Now, another important thing to focus on during this time is recovery methods. Recovery is always important, but especially during this phase, it's going to be ultra important. So what does that mean? Sleep best you can. Again, I understand the challenge behind this, but don't intentionally sacrifice sleep. Make sure you're eating enough protein. I do recommend more like 1 gram per pound during this phase, because as you do get older, you have what's called anabolic resistance, which means you need more protein to get the same benefit out of it. So at least 0.8 grams up to 1 gram per pound, not of lean body mass, but actual weight would be ideal. But even if you can't hit that, just get in as much protein in it as you can. Of course, staying hydrated, minimizing your stress as much as possible, minimizing alcohol consumption. And this can be a big challenge, right? Like you don't feel so good, you're in a bad spot mentally. It can be easy to turn to the drink, which just makes hot flashes worse, makes you feel worse and lower energy. So you really want to minimize it. I'm not saying you can't have any, but you're having a glass or 2 of wine every single night is not helping. One thing you could look at is actually possibly going on the Mediterranean diet. I'm not saying you have to, and you know me, I'm all about not looking at certain diets as magic or anything, but it can potentially help by helping reduce inflammation, although at the same time, we don't really know if inflammation is the issue. And then a big one here is probably not spending time in a calorie deficit. And I know it's a tough thing, especially if you're gaining more weight than you want. It can be really easy to say, you know what, I need to jump in a diet and get this weight off. But if you're already feeling terrible mentally and physically, you're low in your recovery, you're gonna have even less energy, and you're going to run your body into the ground. So while you may not want to hear this, it wouldn't be a terrible idea to spend 2 or 3 years keeping your calories up, keeping up with the active lifestyle, but just focusing on rough maintenance best you can. And the power behind that would be massive for when you get through the other side, because now you'll be in a great spot metabolically and able to come back and hit the ground running. And especially if you have a long history of this, you've been dieting on and off your whole life, and if you continue this pattern through this transition when it's going to be really difficult, you're going to get to the other side, your metabolism is going to be trashed and in no position. And so use this time to your advantage and don't work against your body, work with it. Don't place your self-worth on body image. I promise you nobody else is judging you for this and nobody else cares. Hard for you females. I really feel bad I do because there's so much pressure from society and doctors and everything else to always be on you about this. It's not fair, but take your power back, play the long game, and you will be rewarded so sweetly when your body is finally ready to hit go. And then the other thing you can do is get blood work done, take a look at things, look at your thyroid and everything, see where things are at. And one thing you could do is talk to your doctor if you think it makes sense to do something like progesterone, hormone replacement therapy, as this oftentimes helps people significantly. But again, I can't say if it's right for you or not. That's between you and your doctor. But in a lot of instances, getting on something like that can help you feel so much better. It actually doesn't seem to help necessarily with weight loss, but if you're feeling better, performing better, and overall just have more energy and everything, it could help lead to that. But if for no other reason, just not feeling like crap when you've always felt like crap, that could really be worth its weight in gold. Now, with all that being said, if you hear this and you're like, screw this, I don't care, I need to lose weight, I'm gonna do it anyways, dang it. But okay, like if you're gonna do it regardless of what I say, I do have a method that could help you here. I call it the lose and cruise method. And for someone like you going through this transition, it could actually be the perfect methodology to help lose weight, but not run you into the ground. So to find out more about this method, check out this video here. I hope this video helped. I know this is a difficult time for you, and I really do feel for you. Focus on what you have control over. Get through this. And if you have any questions, just let me know.